Hi everyone, this is Robert and welcome to IDG Live. Today we are looking at Arya, who is somewhere behind me here. We looked at Sansa a couple of weeks ago and I thought, why don't we just work our way through a few of the Stark children? It's been a while since we've done these kind of high-level things. We've been diving down into more sort of discrete topics, but let's look at some of the main characters that we've got going on in this story. So Arya. Um, I won't do a whole history of Arya. I think we all know the basic story, which is broadly the same in the books as it was on the TV show. There are obviously some differences, and what happens a bit later in the TV show may or may not happen in the books. We can talk about that a little bit later. But I would just sort of, by way of setting the scene, just sort of set out a few overarching points about Arya. The first is that because Maisie Williams obviously grew up with the show, we can lose sight very easily of the fact that she is still a child. At the start of the books, she's 9 years old. By the time that we're up to, then she's 11, maybe 12. That's kind of age. She's still not properly grown up. So she is still, for all of the sort of strong-headed opinions and things like that, she is still impressionable. She is still a child. She is still growing and learning. So that's, I think, the first thing we need to understand about her. The second, I think, is that she is a skin changer, but doesn't seem to realize it. This is a quite similar case to a lot of the Starks, is that the only Stark who's really had any proper training in this is Bran, and that's right at the very end of his story from Bloodraven. With Arya, she was developing a bond with Nymeria, but obviously very early on in the story, Nymeria, she sent her away. So she did not manage to develop that bond in real life with her direwolf. However, that has stayed. And as the story has gone on, particularly when we start getting towards the more recent chapters, she's getting more and more of these wolf dreams. That's what she thinks of them as being. They're very real to her. She wakes up, it takes her a little bit disoriented, it takes her a little while to get back into the real world. But she doesn't think, oh, this is me walking into Nymeria, at least as far as we know. We don't actually get that because a lot of the time she does kind of dissociate with all of the Stark stuff because she's being no one or trying her best to be no one, or whichever character she's been told that she has to be. Psychology is quite nuanced to that point, but she has got this very strong wolf bond that is still there. And also, she seems to, there's a moment when she's blind. If you remember, she was the blind girl, and she could see. How could she see? It's because she could see through the eyes of through the eyes of a cat. She kind of subconsciously, without really thinking about it, skin changed into a cat that was there and saw things through that cat's eyes. So she's the second thing I think we need to understand here is this very strong skin changer ability, which is there. It is untrained. It is raw. He has not really grasped it or understood what's going on. Probably subconsciously she's got an idea, but it's certainly not something that she's been working through as something that she wants to concentrate on. So those are the first couple of things. Then I would highlight the two big themes. There are other themes, but the two big themes which run through Arya's story. The first is identity. Now, lots of characters in George R. R. Martin's world have more than one name. We've got quite a few different characters who are hiding, pretending to be someone else. We've got several characters who can sort of shift their appearance, like Jaqen, for example. He can look like somebody else. Arya has this identity issue going all the way through her story. if you count up, when I last counted, it was over 20 different names that she has at various different points, starting off with like nicknames when she was at Winterfell, like Arya Horseface, Arya Underfoot. And then she takes on, particularly when she escapes from King's Landing, she just takes on this succession of names, one after another. She calls herself. There's Ari, of course, there's Nan, Weasel. She keeps on taking all of these names. By the time she gets to Braavos, and then the Faceless Men are giving her new identity. She becomes Cat of the Canals, the Blind Girl, Mercy or Mercy Dean in the pre-release chapter we have in The Winds of Winter. She has all of these different names, and she's constantly kind of shifting between who she is at any given moment in time. However, there is this strong current of starkishness. No matter what else is going on, deep inside her, she cannot let go of the starkishness. Now, this obviously becomes a plot point when she is in Braavos, because she understands that she has to give up her identity in order to become a faceless man. And so she does, but she hides her sword that she's got from Jon Needle. She doesn't throw it away. She hides it because something deep inside says that she wants to go back and collect it at some point. That kind of is now her link across to her former identity. So whenever she does leave the Faceless Men, as she will at some point, then she will collect that sword once more. So what we're going to see is through, and what we have seen through the Faceless Men chapters, is this struggle between Arya and her starkish identity and the becoming no one. You see the starkish thing come through. She's got her kill list. We'll come on to that in just one second. But she's also got a kind of a sense of honor. So she finds in the Mercy, the pre-release chapter from The Winds of Winter, she stumbles across, just by sheer chance, somebody who's on her list happens to be there in Braavos. And so she kills him. Is that what the Faceless Men want? No, absolutely not. She absentmindedly thinks, well, this is going to cause quite a few problems for the Westerosi delegation that's here, because this was one of their guards. But it doesn't matter to her. It's a name on her list. She has to get vengeance. She also, a little bit earlier, she kills Darian, who is a member of the Night's Watch, who came with Sam and Maester Aemon on that journey down to Old Town. They stopped off at Braavos, and he just got out and decided, you know what, I'm all right here, thanks. And he started earning a trade. He was a minstrel, and he started earning a trade doing that, and basically abandoned the Night's Watch and his vows to the Night's Watch. And Arya was not happy with that, and so she kills him, which seems very drastic, but that's her sort of modus operandi at the moment. But it's not so much tied in with the killing so much as the sense of identity. If she wasn't still inside her Arya Stark of Winterfell, she wouldn't care at all about this Night's Watchman that she'd never met before abandoning his vows. It's only because she had this real starkish sense of honor to her that she felt that she had to do something. So that's the sort of the third main point I would make. And the fourth one is this death and vengeance idea. This is a theme which runs all the way through Arya's story, and it just gets darker and darker and darker. And we're at a place now where she is just killing people, that whoever she wants to kill, she will kill. And then also who the Faceless Men want her to kill, she will kill. They're very clear that, this isn't about vengeance. This isn't about whether somebody deserves to die or anything like that. This is just that all men must die, and this is who the many-faced god has chosen. Arya, however, is always going through in her mind a justification. So her descent into this really dark place of being completely at home with death and killing is tempered somewhat by excuse me, I might be about to sneeze. One of those ones that it's sort of like it's just hanging there. It's gone away. It may come back. um, but so with Arya, what was I talking about? Uh, she's the killing for her. She's always still got this idea that this is tied up with who deserves to die, and the Faceless Men are very clear on the fact that it's not about who deserves to die. All men must die. So that is the tension, and this is sort of where I'll wind up this brief intro, is that if you take all of those things, where they lead to is the point where this isn't going to work with the Faceless Men. We see this from outside, we can see this, that she is not abandoning her Starkishness. They are wanting her to abandon her Starkishness. This is not going to work. Despite everything, they keep on promoting her effectively. They keep on taking her into the next level. They keep on giving her more training, more responsibilities. They do recognize, they do see a lot of, I don't think they see all of what's going on with Arya, but they definitely see a lot of it. And they do see that she is still clinging on to her old Stark identity. So there is kind of a couple of things going on there. The first is that there is going to, at some point, there's going to be a clash where she is retaining her Starkish identity, and that is at odds with where she needs to be within the organization. But also, we have to acknowledge that so far the Faceless Men have accepted her, have accepted that element of it. One of the things that I think we'll probably dig into a little bit during this stream is why is it that they're allowing this? Because she's progressing very fast despite failing almost every task that she's given. Right, let's go to Matthew Ryan, new member. Oh, welcome, Matthew. Fantastic. Thank you very much. If you wish to support this channel, that's the best way to do it remains Patreon. I will say a thank you now to my patrons. That is the best way to support this. But if for whatever reason you don't wish to go over to Patreon, you can become a channel member here. I say here, I'm doing this on YouTube. It's also going out on X and Facebook. So hi, if you're on one of those two platforms. Great to see you. But Matthew, fantastic to have you here on board. Let's go to some questions from my patrons then. Orion's Orcas saying, "Hi, Robert. I hope you're doing well." I am, thank you. Arya is my favourite Stark and love the way she sees through people even before travelling to King's Landing. Do you think Arya has a future in a leadership role at the end? She has been poor through most of these books and would have more empathy towards the small folk. She's been more places than any of the Stark kids, and she is the only one who named her direwolf after a royal woman. Or do you think she'll become an antisocial loner? Either way, I don't see her completing her training with the Faceless Men. What do you think? Love to the moderators. And yeah, love to the moderators. While we're here, moderators, thank you. You do an amazing job. A quick shout out, I can see Stephanie Frederick, Carl Karsnark, Andrew Kay, Egreet Weirwood, all there. There may be some others as well. Thank you. If you are there watching live in the chat, give them a little bit of love. So, yes, Arya from very early on does kind of, she sees through people. She's got that kind of bluntness that Ned Stark, her father, has, a sense of right and wrong, but also from Kat, her mother, she's got a lot of the sort of the intellect and sort of understanding of people. Now, that's not to say Ned doesn't have intellect, but I've said before, it's a kind of a counterintuitive for many people observation. But the way that George R. R. Martin writes Kat is as one of the cleverest characters in the entire story. She is always, that when she's with Ned, we see it from her POV. She's there just like pausing, waiting for him to just catch up with her thinking. She's manipulating events. We see when she captures Tyrion, for example, and she very loudly makes it known she's heading north, and then heads up north, and then they sort of secretly go off the track. And Tyrion is like, when he realizes what is going on, he goes, "Ah, that's quite clever. You have actually outthought me," because he'd thought to himself, well, it doesn't matter because we're not going to get far. My father's going to send out some people capturing me. But now he realizes his father to rescue him. But now he realizes that his father's going to be sending people in entirely the wrong direction. And Tyrion, who is also seen in or shown by George R. Martin to be very clever, thinks that Cat has outthought him in that. So, and when you get to like the Red Wedding, she's it wasn't quick enough, but she realizes what's happening just seconds before it's going on. She's concerned about things. She sees all the signs. She tries to warn Robb in advance. Doesn't really work. So she's written as a clever person, and Arya has inherited some of that. So she sees through stuff, and she has this sense of moral right and wrong that she particularly inherits from her father. So yes, she starts off with this kind of being able to see through people. She also starts off, though, as I'm sure you know, very clear. She doesn't want to be a lady. She doesn't want to rule. She well, she doesn't want to like sit there, do all of the sewing. She doesn't want to be married to somebody while they rule. The idea of her ruling is also something that's never really come up. It has to be said. She can lead. There are clearly when her and Hot Pie and Gendry are sort of hanging out, she's the leader, so she can lead, but she's not getting training in any way, shape, or form. There's no to be a leader, and there's no kind of foreshadowing in particular that I can see. Maybe in the chat you've spotted something, in which case let me know. For her to be a ruler in any way. You do mention Nymeria. So her direwolf, all of the Stark children named their own direwolves, and very common theory is that the name that direwolf has in some way echoes the fate of its owner. So, ghost for Jon. What is a ghost? Someone who's died and comes back. What's going to happen to Jon? He's going to die and come back, etc. What about summer? Bran is going to be king of summer after we've had winter and then spring. He's going to be the king of summer. So that's the idea. And then you get Nymeria. Now, who was Nymeria? So the ancient Nymeria was Queen Nymeria of the Rhoynish, who came across. They did live in Essos along the River Rhine, and then they went out on exile. And they went traveling. They went to various places, and they ended up in Dorne, and they basically took over Dorne. Nymeria married into the Martell family and founded a new dynasty who then ruled Dorne. So that's the story. And the feeling that most people have is that what this direwolf name implies is that she was a warrior queen, and therefore Arya is going to be a warrior, which has always been the kind of thing that for me, I get it, but it just feels a little weak. In as much as, firstly, Nymeria wasn't a warrior queen. That might well be how she's remembered, but in reality, we're told that she didn't actually do the fighting herself. She was more a sort of a general figure. So she sort of oversaw the battles rather than was a part of the battles. So that's the kind of the first one. And second, I don't think anyone's suggesting that Arya is going to become queen. So that always felt a little bit uncertain to me. I do wonder whether more of the foreshadowing in this is the in exile and going traveling to a completely different continent. Nymeria came from eventually ended up in Westeros. Arya starts in Westeros and ends up in Essos. That, I think, certainly within the story, obviously she's now in Essos, but I do wonder whether that might be a little bit more about what happens at the very end of the story. Now, obviously on the TV show, we shouldn't take this as exactly what happens, but on the TV show, she went off sailing. What is west of Westeros? So that, I think a lot of people thought, yeah, that's an okay ending for her. What I find intriguing, it's by no means sort of a home run, but I do find it intriguing that when the talk is on of a spin-off, a sequel spin-off to Game of Thrones, there was the idea of the Jon Snow show of let's see what Jon Snow's doing beyond the wall. That was pitched and it has basically been rejected or shelved, I think is the phrase that they're using. They're not saying, no, this is terrible, we'll never do it, but they're saying, okay, well, we're not going to progress with that now. But George R. R. Martin has said that they're considering a sequel spin-off, perhaps set in Essos and perhaps Arya. And this does tie in with a year or maybe even 2 years ago, he did meet Maisie Williams, and I think when he was in London one time, and they had a meal or something, and he sort of cryptically said on his blog post about it that there's some exciting projects perhaps in the offing, and some people said, oh, is there going to be an Arya spin-off? But then nothing really happened, so maybe this is it. But the reason why I'm talking about all of that is that the sort of implication, therefore, is that in the show world, she ends up in Essos. And George R. R. Martin, we all know his relationship with with relationships with the spin-offs is kind of mixed, but early on in the process, he is still very much on board with all of these ideas. And here we've got him seemingly excited about the idea of a spin-off featuring Arya in Essos. So is that what's going to happen in the books? If he is drawn to this idea, it would seem a bit unlikely that if he had some other plan for Arya in mind, that he would be excited about this idea of looking at what Arya might be getting up to in Essos. So it's, as I say, it's not a slam dunk, it's not a home run. Insert any other sporting analogy you wish. But I think there are hints there that maybe she goes to Essos after all of this, echoing Nymeria. Andrew Cade, just picking up in the chat, you're saying you believe the HBO CEO recently said they're potentially scaling back the amount of projects in this universe, worrying about oversaturation, as happened with other universes. Yeah, I don't think he said. I mean, yes, you're right. He did. This was a few months ago. I don't think he talked about scaling back the amount of projects. I think it was more, and this is nuance, but I think it's more staggering the release of them. So we're not in the situation we once were in with Marvel or Star Wars or something, where there was like 6 or 7 different things happening any given year. Here, where we're at the moment, obviously, is we've got 2 TV shows going on, and we know we've only got 2 more seasons of one of them, the House of the Dragon. And as for Dunk and Egg, I think the working assumption is even if it's a big success, they're probably only going to do 4 or 5 seasons and then pause for it and let the characters age up a little bit. So given the fact that we still haven't had any formal green light for anything, even if they greenlit something now, it's not going to be ready until House of the Dragon's finished. Because that would then allow them to keep up with this just 1 or 2 things going on at any given moment in time. So yeah, I think scaling back isn't exactly right. I think it's Um, keeping the tap on low. If that's I'm using a lot of rather tortured analogies here, but that's the feel is that they don't want to swamp the market. They just want really good things, one or two at a time. James Perkins saying, "Greetings, Robert, and to you too. The Faceless Men of Bravos seem to be up to something." Yeah. They have numerous pieces in play across various theatres of the story. Pate Jacken in Old Town, a mysterious assassin in Pike, Arya in Bravos. On the surface, all of these could simply be in service to their outwardly stated goal of serving as priests to the many-faced god. However, it seems like a larger game is afoot. In previous Q&As, you have discussed the political turmoil in Bravos as likely being in relation to their long-standing opposition to dragon-riding Valyrians. However, I doubt that the residents of the House in Black and White share their compatriots' sense of urgency regarding Daenerys. Far more likely, I think, would be their concern about the situation brewing in the far north and the stirring of the others. I think it's no coincidence they have essentially fixated on Arya as their star protege. Do you think the Faceless Men care more about the return of the dragons and their riders and are seeking to use Arya as a potent political tool and traditional assassin, or do they care more about the rising of the others with the intent to put Arya's stark heritage and skin-changing abilities to use? Okay, so a lot going on there, but in terms of what's happening with the Faceless Men, the Balon Greyjoy murder, I think, was a traditional contract. I think that Euron paid for them to do it, and they killed Balon Greyjoy. He may or may not have done it with a dragon egg. What's going on with Jaqen / Pate down in Old Town? I did do a whole video on that. I did a whole series about the Faceless Men if you're interested. But it seems very clear to me that Jaqen is not there to do an assassination, at least initially. He is there to get access to the rare book section of the library. That seems to be what's going on there. So why, and I mean, if you want to know why he's taking on the appearance of Pate, who is the assistant to an archmaester who is very old and very forgetful, has got a key to the inner vaults, but not really the wherewithal to use it or even notice if it wasn't there. So him being Pate means that he can go around with this key and get access to the secret bit of the library. The implication is that they're trying to find some bit of information. We've had some hints that at least one of the books there is The Death of Dragons, which probably tells you how best to be killing dragons. So that seems to be what the play is there. I have talked at other points about the very clear, I think, iron link between the Iron Bank and the Faceless Men. There's almost certainly an underground tunnel leading between the two places. They're two of the oldest establishments in all of Bravos, and the Iron Bank certainly has a history of using the Faceless Men to do their work for them, get rid of rivals, that kind of thing. So if they're close together, what does the Iron Bank think about dragons? Well, we only really have one clear-cut bit of evidence here, which is when Tycho-Nestoris, who's the banker from the Iron Bank, he heads up to the wall. He's trying to find Stannis. They are trying to find who do they back against Cersei. Cersei's refusing to pay her debts, and so they've decided, well, we'll back somebody else to rule Westeros. He's looking for Stannis. He gets to Castle Black. Jon is there. Jon thinks to himself, while they're here, we've not got much food. We've not got many boats. Let's get a small loan for the night's watch, and then we'll worry. After the long night, we'll worry about paying it back. But he negotiates this. To him and Tycho-Nestoris, they sit down, roaring fire. They get a bottle of wine, have a few drinks. discuss things. They come out with an agreement, at the end of which Jon makes a rather weak joke. They sort of go outside. It's very cold, obviously. Jon makes a rather weak joke about, oh, we could really do with a dragon around here to warm things up. And Turkinosaurus suddenly, after this quite jovial chat they've had, suddenly gets all serious and said, we don't joke about dragons. And Jon's like, oh, sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean to offend you. And then they carry on. And it's just this slightly awkward moment where you think, that feels like sort of the veil slipping for one moment. It feels like we can actually see a little bit about what the Iron Bank are personally concerned about, and they will have heard that dragons are back. So this, I think, probably coincides with Jaqen finding out about how to kill dragons. So I think that's definitely a part of the plot. Are they going to be concerned about the others? I've got various questions, similar questions from some other patrons we'll come on to in a bit. Yeah, of course they are. The Faceless Men are not just a cool assassins organization. The Faceless Men, this is a religious order. They are priests of the many-faced god. They have tenets of their religion. They have things that they believe. And at the heart of all of this, they have what we treat as catchphrases. Valadaharis, Vala Morgulis, all men must serve, all men must die. They have those phrases. They are not just cool catchphrases. These are statements of belief. They seriously believe that all men must die. That's a central part of it. Everybody has to die at some point. What is going on in the world is going to be really concerning them, because people are not dying. Now, they will probably at some point hear about the mountain, the zombie mountain down in King's Landing. They may hear about Lady Stoneheart. We'll wheel back to her in a bit. But the others and the Whites, their undead army, will definitely be of a concern. So yes, they will be concerned about that. Might they be sending Arya to help out with that? I think she would be useful, obviously, but I don't think they would think that she is the answer to all of the to how to kill the others. Forget the TV show. That her killing the Night King, the showrunners were very clear that was their decision. It's not anything like that in the books. So they are not sending her up there. I think they'd be very happy for her to end up there, but that's not what the original idea is. What might kill the others? Well, dragons. So it would not surprise me if the great brains of the Faceless Men, the Iron Bank, think to themselves, well, we can use dragons. But then after the dragons have done what we need them to do, get rid of that army of the undead, we want to get rid of the dragons as well. So it depends on how Machiavellian you think that they might be. But I think that they clearly don't like the undead people not dying when they should do. And the Iron Bank clearly don't like dragons. Catherine Furseth saying, hi, Robert. There are several literary themes connected with Arya's arc. One that seems prominent is the idea of identity versus home, which I hadn't really considered before a recent reread. Arya's arc is a lot about identity, but what about home? It struck me that getting home as to the place that represents safety isn't as important to her as it is to Sansa. So home, the North Winterfell, might actually end up less important to the most Starkish of Ned's children. What are your thoughts? I think that's a really interesting observation. So we talked a lot about Sansa a couple of weeks ago. One of the things which is seemingly a big part of her arc is bringing her back to Winterfell as a place of safety in some way. She wanted to get away from Winterfell when she was young, but now she's increasingly focusing, she's building snow castles of Winterfell, and she's increasingly thinking about going back to Winterfell because that was her place of safety, and she realizes it. Now she's been out in the big wide world, she realizes that is a good place for her to be. Added to which, she has been spending all this time being under the control of some pretty horrible people, Cersei and Joffrey and Littlefinger. If she can get to Winterfell, perhaps she can get free from that. So Winterfell as a place, given that Sansa has been increasingly, she's been having to operate on her own. A lot of the Stark kids have done, but she's been having to operate on her own. She's not there thinking, I just need to be back with my family. My family will help protect me. Her thought process will be more about getting to the place, and then she will look after herself. She's becoming a manipulative political operator, and that's probably going to continue. So Winterfell will be very important to Sansa. Added to which, as I think we did mention a couple of weeks ago, people will be suspicious of her up there because she did write that letter, basically begging Robb to bend the knee to Joffrey, and she did marry a Lannister. So there's going to be a bit of suspicion there. So the people are going to be less important. Arya, it's a lot more about identity. The home issue comes because she feels she hasn't got a home anymore. When she leaves King's Landing, her thought is, yeah, well, I'll get back up to Winterfell. Failing that, she'll get to her family. She wanders around the Riverlands for quite a long time. And eventually, she finds herself pretty much on her own in salt pans at this port. And her thought is, where do I go? I have nowhere to go. And that's when she remembers the coin that she's got, the Braavos coin, and she thinks, well, maybe that can be home. So her going to Braavos is because she's heard Winterfell's been burned down. She's heard her family have been killed. She feels on her own. So she's kind of written off Winterfell. But she has not written off the starkishness of her character, which is a strong thread through. So yes, identity versus home for Sansa. Yes, identity as a Stark is there and is increasingly important for her, but home is what is drawing her here. For Arya, then yes, home is a big issue for her, but even bigger is the fact that she's a Stark. So I think that's a really interesting observation. Thank you very much, Catherine. Let's have a quick flick through the chat. Some people call me modest, talking about hot pie, which is good. I will definitely talk about hot pie a little bit later because I think he's got a potentially fascinating little role coming up. Okay, let's go to a question from Zero saying, how far do you think Arya's skin-changing ability will go? While she was blind, we found out she can see through a cat's eyes. Do you think she'll get to the point of doing it intentionally? So, yes-ish. The ish, I would say, is this, I think I used this word before, is this dissociating. That what she's got going on while she's in Braavos is she is trying her very best to do the Faceless Man thing. She is trying really hard to take on the identities that she's been given, to not be a Stark, but it is not working. And so increasingly she's doing the Starkish things, but then just kind of like blanking them out. She wakes up, the last chapter, the Mercy chapter, is a great example of this. She wakes up after having a wolf dream. She's there. She was running through the woods as Nymeria. She wakes up and kind of like has to shake her head and get herself into the mindset about who she is. Mercy is this kind of a person. Mercy does that first. And she's thinking through, it's really good writing from George R. R. Martin, but she is thinking through almost like in the third person about what this person would do wanting to be that other person. So at the end of that chapter, spoilers, but this is just it's a pre-release chapter, but George R. R. Martin has confirmed that he has gone back to at least one of those pre-release chapters and made some changes. So we can't take this as canon yet. But at the end of that chapter, she kills Ralph the Sweetling. And she kills him in a very, he's one of the names on her list. She kills him in a very deliberate way, which is an echo of his killing earlier, much earlier, of Lomi, who was Arya's friend. And so she sort of reenacts that the other way round and basically executes him for his crimes. And having done that, and immediately this is what her thoughts were. So she's killed him. She is momentarily a bit annoyed because she killed him in the wrong place. Now she'd have to drag the body somewhere. But then it immediately goes into this. Mercy, 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 she sang sadly. A foolish, giddy girl she'd been, but good-hearted. She would miss her, and she would miss Dana and the Snapper and the rest, even Isambaro and Bobono. This would make trouble for the Sea Lord and the envoy with the chicken, and the envoy with the chicken on his chest. But she did not doubt. She would think about that later, though. Just now there was no time. I had best run. Mercy still had some lines to say, her first lines and her last, and Isambaro would have her pretty little empty head if she were late. And so what's happening there is that she shifts from being in the moment she's just to kill the person, she's working out how to dispose of the body, to try and get back into character. A part of her brain says, you're going to have to leave this at some point, probably because of what you've done. Probably they will find out what you did. Remember, that's what happened with Darion. But then she gets deeper and deeper into the character. She's saying she can think about that later. Now there's no time because this is what Mercy has to do. She's got to run. She's got to get back. She's undercover as this person in the Mummers troupe. She has to go back in time to play her part in the play. Which is, as I say, it's really dissociative because it's like, so you've just killed someone and you're immediately stopping thinking about that. And you're also aware that there will be implications of that, but you've immediately said, okay, I can think about that later. Your focus right now is on just going back into the character that she'd been given. So it's a fascinating sort of psychological assessment of who she is and what she is about as a character at that point. So that was a bit of digression, but that's the point I'm trying to make, is that she is not engaging with the skin changing part of what she's doing. She wakes up from sleep skin changing into Nymeria and immediately tries to push that back. That starts to think about who's the character I'm supposed to be right now. Similarly, if she'd sat and thought about it, she would have gone, so I'm looking through the eyes of a cat. How did I do that? What on earth's working? This seems like skin changing. I've heard that there are skin. She could have gone down that route. We do not see that happen. Instead, she's just goes straight into thinking about how does she progress more with the training with the Faceless Men. She's not engaging with that, but because she knows she can't be a Stark right now, she's taking herself away from that. So is she going to do this skin changing intentionally? She may, particularly with the cats, now that she knows she can do it, but she won't sort of embrace it. She won't think about training how to become better at this. She's not sort of thinking sneakily, I can, while they think that I'm sleeping, actually what I'm doing is training myself to be skin changing into a cat over there. She doesn't seem to be doing any of that kind of stuff. It's just, this is a thing that I can do. Zero also saying, early in Arya's training, the kindly man says Arya can choose to leave at any point. Do you think we should take him at his word. Further, has she learned too much about them to be able to just leave without consequence? I think this is a really interesting question because we don't know enough yet to understand completely how much they're okay for her to know and understand. It's clear to us, and I think also to Arya, is that although, yes, she has been progressing, yes, she's been learning new stuff, yes, she's got the face-changing thing that she's learned about, but there's more. She's gone down 3 levels so far. I did a video on what is beneath the House of Black and White. She's been down 3 levels, but there are more levels, and there are tunnels going off from that chamber that she went down to there. There's so much more, so many more secrets that she does not know about. She asks questions like, where do the clothes go? Where does the gold go from all of these bodies that's been brought in here? All of that, she knows things happen. And she's learned some of it. She kind of understands what happens with the clothes. The clothes are used for disguises, for assassins. But the gold, she doesn't know what's happening with that. A whole load of people came in to have a discussion. They were divvying up the murder contracts between them. She didn't know how most of those people. She didn't know where they came from. She didn't know how they came into that room. There's a lot she doesn't know. So we shouldn't pretend that she knows all of the secrets of the Faceless Men at this point. There's a fair chance she will learn more as she's going through this. So would they be willing to let her go? I mean, my long-term, I've got another working theory, which I will come on to in a moment. But the working theory I've had for quite a while is that their plan is to let her go. Their plan is they're going to train her up, but they knew when they took her on, they knew who she was, and what her kill list was, and what she would do if ever she were set free. If you take that, and they also know that she's not giving up her Stark identity as much as they're telling her she has to. If you take all of that and try and draw out, well, what's the logical conclusion from this? They recruited her knowing that here's this list of people she wants to kill. They know that she hasn't been giving that up because she's going back and killing those people that she can when they happen to be in Bravos. And yet they're still training her up to be an assassin. The implication there is that they are okay with when she leaves the building, her using the skills she's learned to kill the people on her list. Why might they be okay with that? Well, the straightforward answer is because there are some people on that list that they would be very happy if they were killed. The top of the list right now is probably Cersei for them. Cersei has not been paying back the money that she owes the Iron Bank. They have withdrawn their support from Cersei. They are looking for somebody to oppose her. If they could get somebody to kill her, that would be fantastic. So that's the first person. The Mountain, when word gets out that he might be undead, that would be heretical to them. All men must die, even Gregor Clegane. So my working theory I've had for quite some time, as I say, I have got something else that I'll sort of talk about in a moment, but my working theory for a long time is that they are training her up in full knowledge of the fact that at some point she's going to leave, because they're happy for her to then go and kill the people that are on her list. If you look at it that way round, you're then not getting this huge confrontation you had in the TV show, which always felt a little bit, I don't know, maybe it was just me, felt a little bit forced. She goes there, she kind of confronts Jack and Hagar and says, I'm leaving. And basically, and she goes, and then the waif sort of chases her, and then she manages to escape out. And it's like, so what, you're you're just sending one person after and then letting her go after that, and then not following up, avenging the death of your person. Jaqen H'ghar seems very relaxed about it personally. It didn't quite add up to me. So, yeah, I think they're training her up to kill the people on her list. A.D. Ross saying, "Greetings, Sir Robert. I hope you are doing well." I am, thank you. You've talked in the past videos about how the Faceless Men may have been quite proactive in their recruitment of Arya, i.e., Jaqen H'ghar's interest in her and the deaths he offers were not merely coincidental. I wonder then if the Faceless Men are aware of Arya's warging abilities and whether this may have factored into their decision to recruit her and permit her a significant amount of latitude in not becoming no one. Although the Faceless Men don't seem overtly connected with the North, they do seem to have knowledge of most religions, and Arya wouldn't be the first high-profile skin changer to have an impact south of the neck. Perhaps the Faceless Men are aware of Bloodraven and the reasons for how powerful and knowledgeable he became. Perhaps they see Arya as a potential successor of sorts whom they could bring into their fold, given her young age and impressionability. Okay, it's an interesting set of thoughts there. Let's start with the basis here of Arya being recruited by the Faceless Men. Why did they recruit her? Now, I think it's too much of a digression to go there, but I think that Jaqen was there in the Black Cells and then in that cage heading north because he was contracted to kill somebody in that group. I think that was supposed to be Ned Stark. The plan was for Ned Stark to be a part of that group. I think that was what was going on. Did a video about that. Jaqen, however, did not need to kill Ned Stark because Ned Stark had been already killed. So he sort of heads up north, and Arya catches his eye because, first of all, she's pretending to be someone she's not. And probably he can see that she kind of moves with a kind of like as a trained fighter, and not just a trained fighter, but somebody who's been trained as a water dancer from Braavos, which is obviously for Faceless Men from Braavos. This is going to be quite intriguing. So he suddenly is like, "Well, who's this then?" And he watches, and he kind of like over time he tests her and to see how she would react. He basically says, "You can kill 3 people. I will do it for you. Just tell me the names." Testing. Is she actually the kind of person who will go, "Okay, well, I want you to kill that person, and now I want you to kill that person," without going, "Oh, no, murder. No, that's not it. I want to forgive and forget and move on." She seems very okay with murder. She seems very good. Again, she changes her name. She hides herself. She takes on new identities. She's clearly very intelligent. She's clearly okay with death. She herself orchestrates a whole load of people to be killing a load of guards, basically. Added to which, it becomes very apparent that she has no family. And so she won't be missed. Nobody's going to be going, "Well, we now have to put out this big hunt for her because her family's gone." Yes, the Lannisters, whoever might go, but she's young enough that she will grow up and people will not recognize her. So all of that adds up to, this is the perfect candidate, the perfect recruit, somebody who clearly loves death in some kind of way, no particular attachments to Westeros, already an expert at changing their identity, intelligent, a quick learner, all of the things you might want, which is why Jaqen gives her the opportunity to basically go to Braavos and train. So that's the starting point. Do we need them to know, or Jaqen to know, that she's a skin changer? Is there a chance for him to know that she's a skin changer? Not much of a chance, because particularly at this time, she's it's just in her dreams. She has wolf dreams. So there's he won't see her at any point, like doing the weird eye thing and sort of walking into an animal somewhere. He won't see her do any of the things you might expect from a skin changer. So there's no reason to believe he knew that she was a skin changer, and there's no reason to believe that the Faceless Men in Bravos know that she's a skin changer, because she hasn't told them anything and she doesn't act on anything, and it's mostly while she's asleep. As it happens, this does make her even more right for the Faceless Men, because she is changing her face. She is taking on a new identity in the same way that you do as a faceless man. When you're putting on the face mask, you're taking on a completely new identity. Um, Ariel Winchester saying, "Hi there, Robert. I hope you're having a great day." I am, thank you very much. Arya is one of my favourite characters. I find it fascinating that she, primarily in the earlier books, is compared to Lyanna quite a bit. Her looks, personality, lack of conformity. Do you think Arya's skill as an assassin and ability to adapt to most situations she's in is a reflection of what could have been Lyanna's potential had she not died? Second question, do you think Arya will realise that she is a warg? Um, I sort of covered the skin changing walking thing already. Um, I think at some point she will, but at the moment she's dissociating. In terms of the first bit, the link across to Lyanna, yeah, this is something that you wouldn't really get from the TV show, but comes up quite a lot actually in the books. We so Ned tells her to her face that she reminds him of Lyanna. Um, he basically says, "Yeah, if you gave her a sword, she'd happily be training to be fighting." She had a bit of the wolf blood in her. Arya does too. Um, then Harwin, who she meets in the Brotherhood without banners, Harwin sort of like in passing says that Arya rides like Lyanna Stark did. Lyanna Stark was very good at riding horses. Arya is also very good at riding horses. Bran, when he goes through the Weirwood network, that time when he's there and he looks through the eyes of the Weirwood tree in Winterfell, sort of going back through time, he sees his father there. He goes back and he sees a young girl and a young boy fighting in the Godswood. And his first thought was, that's Arya. Then he thinks, well, it can't be Arya, because the only person that Arya at that sort of age would be playing with would be him, and that's definitely not him that she's playing with. This is pretty clearly Lyanna and Benjen. But the key point is that Bran looked at Lyanna and thought, oh, is that Arya? So they do look very similar. And then we get the character things which come through, which I think George R. Martin is pretty clear on. One of the earliest moments, key moments with Arya, comes when she protects Micah from a bully, from Joffrey. And what do we know about Lyanna? Is that she protected Howland Reed from some bullies. So there's something in their character, this feeling of needing to stand up to bullies, stand for the right things in the world. A really strong moral compass. That is another echo of Lyanna in Arya. And then finally, they both have a strong connection with Harrenhal. Arya is obviously there for a reasonable chunk of the story, and Lyanna, the attorney at Harrenhal, was there, and she was there. And she was also picked up by Rhaegar somewhere close to Harrenhal, we're told. So why is George R. R. Martin doing this? Well, a lot of reasons, I'm sure. part, I think, is for us to understand a bit more about Lyanna's character through these interactions, that she likes fighting, that she's good on a horse. This tells us a few things about, oh, maybe she could be the Knight of the Laughing Tree, because she's good at riding, she's good at fighting. So we're being encouraged to see bits about what Lyanna must have been by looking at what Arya is like. And then I think we're also supposed to take across the link between Jon and Arya, and obviously Lyanna is Jon's real mother, and their relationship is the closest out of those Stark siblings. So I think it's a sort of a little nod towards this. The third thing is that we're supposed to see a bit more about Lyanna because we know what Arya's like, but I think we're also supposed to be thinking, okay, so we now know a little bit about more, because we are thinking about what Arya is like, what therefore might that tell us about what Lyanna might have done. So we can start to speculate a little bit more. If we're thinking that Lyanna was like Arya, the idea that she just ran off with someone rather than being captured by somebody, she ran off with them because of the adventure, because of love, because of whatever, that feels a lot more like Arya than just being captured. So I think George R. R. Martin is, again, sort of just hinting a little bit about what's going on. And also there's obviously this idea of being an impressive fighter taking on a different identity at a young age. Big echo across there. Lyanna is the Knight of the Laughing Tree. Arya is lots of different people. Let's have a quick flick through the chat. Rob, this is a Greek word saying Rob Stark was around Northerners, so he walked Grey Wind. Arya wasn't, so she thinks it's just dreams. Yes, it's a shame we never got a POV from Rob Stark, and George R. Martin has also said it's a shame. If he could go back and write one POV, it would be Rob's. So we never 100% know what the connection was, the skin changing connection was between Rob and Grey Wind. We know that they were close. We know that Grey Wind sort of did things that Rob wanted to without there being any clear communication going on. There are certainly some hints that Grey Wind scouted out a goat track through some mountains, and then Rob knew the goat track that they followed, which seems to imply there was something closer than just the dire wolf is guiding them through. So there are lots of kind of hints going on here, but we never know exactly how strong that was. But it's worth, I think, noting that whereas skin changes north of the wall are accepted, they may not be loved, but they're accepted. South of the wall, there is still a huge amount of uncertainty, to put it charitably, about skin changes. So Rob, even if he knew that that's what he was doing, he wouldn't announce it. He wouldn't tell people. People around him would guess, but he wouldn't sort of come out and say, "I'm a skin changer. This is my direwolf. Sometimes I can see through his eyes." He never would come out and say that. Arya has got nothing, though. No frame reference or anything. Okay, so Effective Rambling saying, check out our dear friend and chatter. Derry's read it before. Bookish discussions on her channel. Yeah, do that. Google Derry's read it before. You will find it's an excellent little channel. So let's go to Maura Lee. Hi there, Maura, if you're there, saying, Arya Stark is currently in Braavos, training to become a Faceless Man. Once her training is complete, has George R. R. Martin left any hidden or not so hidden clues as to how Arya might use her training in the future? Will it be in fighting an army of the dead, like on the TV show? Will it be playing some other role? Will Arya have anything to do with the fates of Cersei and Littlefinger? Now, do you think that she will play a role in helping her mother find peace in death once Lady Stoneheart has had her revenge on the murders of herself and her son? This is, I said I would come to it. This is my emerging alternative theory about Arya leaving the Faceless Men, leaving Braavos and coming back to Westeros. My working theory for a long time has been this one, that they will just let her go because they think that she's going to go and murder the people that they want her to. I'm starting to see that makes logical sense to me. I'm starting to see quite a lot of textual hints linking her with her mother and the gift of mercy. So let's say that the Faceless Men hear about this person who should have been dead and has now come back. This is an abomination to them. All men must die. People should not be resurrected as firewights. And they decide she must die. Perhaps they even get a commission to kill her. Would they send Arya out to do it? That's an odd thought, but perhaps. So let's imagine that they did. They say, maybe they don't say, this is your mother. They say there's this character called Lady Stoneheart. You have to go and find her in the Riverlands, and you have to kill her. So off she goes. Now, when I say that there are lots of kind of textual hints here, what I mean is that there are links between Catelyn Stark, and Arya, strong ones. Arya has got very strong cat links all the way through. First of all, she's in the Red Keep. Syria Farrell sends her off catching cats. Is that what she's going to be sent off to do later by another person from Braavos, to go and catch another cat, Catelyn? Possibly. Then at one point she takes the name Cat of the Canals, which is another way of saying Catelyn of the Rivers, which is obviously her mother. She sees through the eyes, she skin changes through the eyes of a cat. So there's this long kind of cat link going on, which you might say, well, of course, there'd be a link across to her mother. George R. Martin will give this kind of stuff, but there isn't as strong a link across to her father in that kind of level, and she is more resembling in many ways of her father than her mother. So we get the cat links. Then we also get the fact Lady Stoneheart only exists. She's only come back from the dead because Beric Dondarrion gave her the kiss of life. Basically, he transferred his soul and life energy that he had got from the Red God, it would appear, into her. We've asked many times over the years why. Why did he do it? And sort of come often to the conclusion that he was weary. He'd had enough. Every time he died and came back, he lost a little bit more of who he was. He couldn't remember the name of the woman that he was betrothed to. He lost the love of food and things like that. So he'd reached the end. But one overlooked fact here, I think, is the fact that when Arya was there with Beric, she makes him promise that he would reunite her with her mother. And this, I do wonder, is part of why he brought back Lady Stoneheart, so that he could fulfill that promise. He'd made a promise that he was going to try to unite them, and that was taken from him when she died, when Cat died, but now he had the chance to make it possible again. That, I think, is quite a strong driving point going on there, which implies that they will reunite at some point. There's also the extra layer, obviously, who actually found the body of Catelyn Stark. It was Nymeria, who Arya was kind of skin changing into, effectively. So we get that. We get the chasing Cat. We get the link across through Beric Dondarrion to they will reunite. And then we get this idea of the gift of mercy, because with Arya's focus in on death, this is one of those kind of twists on this, which we see happening several different times here. First of all, you get the Hound. The Hound gets a wound which is going to kill him. He asks for the gift of mercy from Arya. He wants her to take him away from his pain. And she decides not to. She just walks away. She leaves him to die in pain. Now, there are many reasons why, but one of them was probably that she couldn't bring herself to kill him. She had not learned how to do this gift of mercy. She gets over to Braavos, and she, without even being trained, gives someone the gift of mercy. There's a pool in the center of the main floor of the temple there. Somebody came in to die, basically, and he asks for a drink of the water, and she gets some up, scoops some up, come up in a cup, gives it to this person, and then they die. She gave the gift of mercy without even realizing it. Then we have that last chapter. We have of her, what's her actual name? Mercy. So this is a lot more of a kind of like a trying to read the runes of what George R. Martin has written in the book as to what might happen. Maybe she's not sent by the Faceless Men to kill Lady Stoneheart. Maybe she just happens to be there and go look, hear that her mother's alive, and go and find her, and then gives her the gift of mercy. It's very clear, very important, I think, to say that she's, when we say give her the gift of mercy, she's not just going to turn up and kill her. We need Lady Stoneheart to reach a point where she is at peace. What has been driving her since her return has been this need for revenge. Two things: this need to find her children, the children that remain to her, because she thinks that Rickon and Bran are both dead. She knows that Robb is dead, but Sansa and Arya, she thinks, are both alive. She wants to find them, and she wants to exact revenge on the people who did the Red Wedding. If Arya finds her, then and if that coincides with Sansa being unveiled as who she is in the Vale, and then maybe even the news filters down, Bran and Rickon are actually alive, they weren't killed. A lot of that reason for her to keep going will have disappeared. If by then she has already enacted some revenge, great. She will then be in a place where maybe she does want the gift of mercy. If she hasn't got all the revenge she wants, who better for her to pass it on to than Arya? Arya wanted House Frey on her list, but she didn't know who. She didn't know the names of who was responsible. So they are sort of on the list already, and she can finish off the job. So that's my new alternate understanding of how Arya might be back in Bravos, in Westeros. She will be there, either sent or hearing and going on her own bat to find her mother, Lady Stoneheart, and giving her the gift of mercy. Have a quick flick through the chat. Mark Shisa saying, who could there be to tell and teach Arya about warging? Jon knows that warging is a thing from his time with the wildlings, but he himself doesn't actively try to warg into Ghost. So with Jon, it's going to be instinct. He's going to die, and his spirit he's calling out. The last thing he does is call out to Ghost. And his spirit, we saw this with Varamir Sixskins, his spirit kind of leaves his body and he can find his way to Ghost. So that's where Jon's going to come into this. In terms of Arya, I don't think there's anyone in Bravos who's going to be teaching her. When she gets to Westeros, again, she's going to be a loner most of the time. It's only when she gets all the way to the far north that she can actually start, assuming she does, if she gets to Winterfell and she meets up with, I don't know, Bran, and he might be able to help her a bit. Gabriel Farrell saying, hi, Robert. I hope you are well. I am. Thank you. One of the so many most disappointing aspects of the later seasons of the TV show for me was what became of Arya. She went from being this fascinating subversion of the lady's life is not for me trope, who essentially gets what she wants and is broken by the world the world she finds and what she experiences, to the point where she struggles to even remember who she is. Then in the show, she becomes this extremely composed and confident, unstoppable badass assassin. This may be fun to watch as she gets revenge on the Freys and does cool knife tricks, but ultimately loses a lot of what made her such an interesting character in the books and early seasons. So my question is this. If you were George, how would you go about keeping Arya an interesting and complex character and prevent her from going down the route she went in the show? Is it possible to strike the balance between her getting revenge and being a badass assassin and remaining a well-rounded character? I think it is possible. So the thing for Arya is to carry on the arc. The death thing, this is half of it. Should reach the nadir of this with the Faceless Men, and then the second half of the journey should be bringing her back to a more or a better place regarding killing. At the moment, she's just like, there's no moral qualms. She just kills somebody just because she wants to. This second half of the story for her, I think George R. Martin will do this, will be her starting to question more about the deaths as she goes along. There's Lady Stoneheart, if she gets there, maybe she does that death purely as mercy. Maybe she gets to the decision with Sandor Clegane, if she meets him again, that she didn't she sort of took him off the list. She didn't technically take him off the list. Does she formally do that with him there? Then you get, what about the Zombie Mountain? I don't think it will happen exactly as it did on the TV show, but if she gets there with Sandor, and Sandor's going to be like, okay, this is mine. This guy here I have to deal with, not you. I've got much more history than you have here. And her actually giving up the kill and saying, okay, you do that. All of that will lead to her being in a better and more positive place. But they should be hard moments when she's making real active choices that align with the morality that is there, because she has this very strong moral core, but it has been eroded by this very lax approach to death. She can just kill people and it's okay. So that would be how I would tackle the death side of things. They did it in the show, on the TV show. You may remember, I think. Well, I'll tell you the incident, and then you can make your own mind up about what you think it was. You will remember in whatever it was, the penultimate episode, perhaps. Arya goes into the Red Keep with the Hound, and she's there to be doing some killing of the people on her list. And the Hound gives her this little talk, and basically says, "Look, you don't want to live a life like I have. You have to, let these things go." And she kind of like stumbles out, and she sees people dying completely meaninglessly, and then a white horse appears, and she jumps onto it and then rides out of shot. I think that was a symbolic, bit of attempted symbolism, perhaps, from the showrunners to show that she had been through this struggle. Getting on the white horse was some sort of a freedom, and she could like escape out. So George R. R. Martin will take his time over this, and make it more nuanced. But I think that from the killing arc, we will see her get to a more healthy approach to death and dying than what she has had. So that's the first bit. And then the identity bit is the second. I think she needs to lean back into, at the moment, she's got this kind of dichotomous behavior going on where she is being a Stark, but she's telling the Faceless Men she's going to become no one, or even that she is no one. She needs to lean back into being a Stark, reclaim Needle, head back to Westeros to meet up with her family, to enact revenge on their behalf, etc., etc., etc. So she needs to go there, but then at the end of it, also reach this more positive state where she's not blaming everyone around her. She's not just saying, I am a Stark, I therefore have to do my duty like her father would. She wants her own freedom because that's who she is. And so she's not hanging around. She's not going to be in contention to be ruling Winterfell. So that's how I would do it. I would take those arcs and I would take them to what feel to me to be the most logical conclusions. Let's go to Ranabir Mitra, saying, salutations, Robert and Dan the dog. I'm currently in Bravos, aka Amsterdam. Yeah, for those who missed this was a couple of years ago, I'm going to say. George R. R. Martin was on his travels and he happened to be in Amsterdam. He wrote a blog post about it and mentioned in passing that lots of people, me included, instinctively, when we think of Bravos, we think, well, what's the real world inspiration for this? Venice, because in so many ways it has to be. But Amsterdam has also got a lot of canals. If you've ever been there, you'll know it's the canals all over the place. And George R. R. Martin said he'd not been to Venice, but he had spent some time in Amsterdam, and that was what was in his mind. So yes, Amsterdam is Bravos. How do you believe Arya travels back to Westeros? A ship for sure, but what's the destination? I ask because I do not see any reason why she would land back in the Riverlands. A ship to Eastwatch or White Harbour makes more sense to me. I believe Wyman Manderley is working with Cotter Pike in the building of war galleys. I feel that those ships somehow get her from Bravos back to the north. What do you think? Yeah, so all of this does depend on the manner of her leaving. If she's in a rush, something like what happened on the TV show, she'll just get on the first boat out of there. I've got no doubt, and it's been wherever that ends up, and then she'll figure it out from there. Then, if she's sent on a mission from the Faceless Men to the Riverlands, then she'd probably head back to somewhere like Saltpans, where she left Westeros from in the first place. If she leaves because she suddenly feels the call of the Stark identity, then yes, heading up to White Harbour or Eastwatch kind of makes sense. She has, incidentally, in her youth, we're told that she spent almost all of her time in Winterfell, but she did twice go with her father to White Harbour. So that's actually a city that she sort of knew a little bit about. Or if she's going to finish doing her kill list, the obvious place to go is actually King's Landing, because that's where most of the other people on her kill list are. So the range of where she lands is entirely about what's motivating her going back. Is she going back on Lady Stoneheart mission? Is she going back to get to the north because of her Stark identity? Is she going to be following her kill list, in which case we're looking at somewhere closer to King's Landing? Yeah, I think that was it. I think that answered that one there. And Elsbetta. So, oh, actually, no, I had another question from Rabbi Mitra. So this is that's the end actually of my patron questions about Arya. I've got some more questions to come. Do not worry. We've got we'll be talking here for a while yet. Do not worry. But if you've got any more questions, now is a good time to drop them into the chat. I will try and pick up as many as I can. But Rabbi Mitra is saying, shared this with you on X today, but the Royal Shakespeare Company is publicly casting only for puppeteers for the Mad King play. Apparently, all other roles will be internally sourced and probably already done by now. So, alongside jousting, we might see a small group of puppeteers in the expanded stage showcasing the Harrenhal tourney festivities. Yeah, I have thoughts on this. So, if you've missed all of this, there's a stage play that is going to be happening. George R. R. Martin sanctioned stage play. It's called Game of Thrones: The Mad King, and it is set around the tourney at Harrenhal, which obviously is very exciting because there's so much that we will learn about the background of Robert's Rebellion from what happens in that stage play. It has been confirmed to be starting off in Stratford-upon-Avon in central England at the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. And the troupe of actors, it's the Royal Shakespeare Company themselves who are doing it. So that's the sort of the headline. Tickets are actually going to go on sale quite soon. Now, it's going to be a staggered sale. So first of all, kind of members of the Royal Shakespeare Company, then over the first few days, and then it will go open to the public a little bit later on. But if you are interested, then I'd recommend you join the Royal Shakespeare Society. That will be the best way for you to get tickets. So that's the sort of the headlines. If you read the blurb that they give us, there are a few intriguing points coming out. The first is this is going to be done on a cross-shaped stage, which is going to take up extra room. So actually, the seating capacity at the theatre is going to be slightly down on what it normally is. Now, this is intriguing because I know the theatre. I've been there several times. It's a big stage. It can comfortably do any production you could possibly imagine. This is the only time that I've heard. I mean, they may well have done it before, but certainly while I've been there, the first time that I've heard of them expanding the stage because it needs to be bigger. Why does it need to be bigger? Well, the cross shape seems to imply that we're going to have things going on and off, side to side. This is a tourney. I think there will be jousting, which is where I think the puppetry comes in. Because if you've seen any big recent production. War Horse is a good example of this. Life of Pi is a good example of this. The puppetry is not. It's different level these days. It is completely spending disbelief. You can still be very much in the moment when you're watching it. I think that we are going to have jousting happening across this stage with the puppetry horses. I think that's what's going to be going on. The reason, as well as the fact that this is a tourney, and we're told to be expecting spectacular. Surely we will get to that, and I don't think we can tell the story of the tourney at Harrenhal without seeing Rhaegar win the tourney, without seeing the Knight of the Laughing Tree. We have to have something like that. But also, if you look at the list of creatives when they're saying who's involved in this, obviously they start out writer, director, producer, but then the next names on the list are puppetry. Before you get to costumes, before you get to all of the other stuff, puppetry. They're placing that really high up on the list by the people who did the tiger in Life of Pi. Google it. It looks pretty astonishing. And so I think that's what we've got going on here. And I'm very excited about that. Actually, I have to say, I think we're going to see a huge amount that does not what you would not expect to see in a normal stage play. But there's 2 or 3 points, therefore, that come with this. One is that I said this was already a big stage, and they are making it even bigger. They're actually leaving. If you look at the Royal Shakespeare Theatre's schedule, they're leaving, I think, maybe a good couple of weeks gap after the previous production before this new one. Normally they turn things around in just a handful of days, but they're leaving extra time in there because of the work they're going to be having to do for the stage. This does mean that it kind of limits which theatres can put this production on. Our working assumption is that after Stratford, this is going to go to London, New York, Australia, but there's still it's the limited on which of these places will actually be able to take it. The smaller theatres would not be able to take this. It'll have to be the larger theatres that do, which also calls into doubt the idea that this might go on a kind of a regional tour. If you need to completely transform your stage into a much larger stage, then a lot of regional theatres simply wouldn't be able to put it up, which is a shame, because I'm lucky enough to be close enough to Stratford and London that I can definitely see this, but I know a lot of you aren't. So that's a bit frustrating. Rabbi Mitra, I think you also did point out that they are recording this. Now, this is quite standard for the Royal Shakespeare Company. They do record all of their plays for posterity. But the fact it's being recorded does open up the possibility that it could be shown on some kind of streaming service somewhere at some point. You can the Royal Shakespeare Company, the National Theatre in London, do this a lot. Certainly for British TV, I think Hamilton, you can definitely find that somewhere. If you're looking wherever you feel, I don't know exactly where it's streaming now, but I've definitely seen Hamilton on my TV. So this is not just a whimsical thought. I think it might well happen. The other point I would make when I was reading through the blurb is that we have been thinking about this very much as the tourney at Harrenhal, which is, then that's the focus of this. But the official description is I don't have the exact words in front of me, but it's something like spanning years before Robert's Rebellion, which seems to imply we're not just going to get the tourney itself. We might get some stuff beforehand. And very exciting, we could even get some stuff afterwards. The focus of this, though, is on the Mad King himself and the Iron Throne. The working title for this was the Iron Throne. Now it's the Mad King. So I think if you're going to do some sort of an arc for the story that they're going to be telling, because they're not just going to like say, and here's a whole bunch of things that happened at the tourney at Harrenhal. There will be a story arc going on, and the story arc is that the king is mad, and the people of the land and the lords of the land are thinking, shall we depose the king? And if so, how are we going to depose the king? That's the overarching arc, which means that the end point has to be either Robert's Rebellion itself with the death of the Mad King, or the moment that it becomes apparent that the whole plotting that was going to go on at Harrenhal has fallen apart, and the Mad King can carry on his reign for a couple more years anyway. So it's not just about the tourney at Harrenhal as the headline there. It's going to be much wider. Let's have a quick see of the chat have been talking about this. Sorry to be in a lurker tonight. Hi everyone, have some late mod love. Thank you very much. And a little bit of hot pie love. Oh yeah, I said I was going to talk about hot pie. So one scene I really liked in the TV show was when Arya comes back to Westeros. She arrives in the Riverlands and she sits down at the inn at the crossroads and meets Hot Pie. And Hot Pie is there chatting away, and he sort of says, "Oh, and Jon Snow is alive and well and Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. Oh, and he's now claimed Winterfell." And you see Arya go outside, get onto her horse, and this is the inn at the crossroads. This is where decisions are made. Which direction are we going? The fate of the kingdom has been decided many times on which direction people go on that crossroads. And she just sits on the horse for a moment, deciding, does she go south to try and kill Cersei, which was her original plan, or does she go north to reconnect with Jon and the other Starks? And she decides to go north. That, I think, was a really, just as a moment, I thought that worked really well with the TV show, because that's the kind of feel that we've got for Arya. Is that I talked a little bit earlier about, well, if she's going to go and try and kill Cersei, then she's going to go down towards King's Landing. If she's heading back to the Stark, she might go to White Hub. I mapped out the possible places that she could be landing in Westeros. But the overarching thought is that maybe she will have one of those moments when she's in Westeros and she changes her mind. She was going to do one thing and now she's going to do another. So maybe she arrives in somewhere like Saltpans and then she hears about Lady Stoneheart. Oh, they say Lady Catelyn has come back. She feels she has to go and investigate. Let's say she does hear about Winterfell falling to the Starks once more and decides to head up north. Whatever it is, maybe she will have a decision point that will allow her to go in a different direction to where she was going to be going before. Um, let's go to a question with where was it? I'm sure I had a question here somewhere. Oh yes, Matthew Ryan. If you could ask George R. R. Martin one question about the lore of the Song of Ice and Fire universe, what would it be? Any big question you just crave the answer to? I get asked this a lot. I don't. The problem is I don't have just one question, um, so I don't have a ready answer. I think it would just be on one of those nagging things that I I feel sure that or not sure, but I'm like 95% certain about Howland Reed and Ashora Dane, for example. That's one that I'm pretty confident on. But I'd love to get confirmation. We may get confirmation of that, incidentally, in the stage play. This is like one of the many, many things we may well get confirmation of. So the the fact is, though, that every interview you see with George R. R. Martin that he's done in the last 10 years or so since Game of Thrones got big, he's very cagey. He doesn't want to give anything away. It used to be a matter of asking him a whole load of stuff, and then he'd just reply with the bits that he wanted to. And like, if he, for whatever reason, didn't want to answer something, he'd just sort of say, "I'll keep reading." Now it's a matter of can you craft a question which asks for a very specific matter of detail that very probably is not it's not spoilery, and so he feels okay about letting it out. For example, there was that time a few years ago when History of Westeros asked him the question about whether Bloodraven took Dark Sister to the wall with him, and he said yes. And it was a rare occasion of him recently sort of confirming a thing, and that's right. That didn't actually change anything. That's just us nerds want to know these things. But in reality, that's the kind of thing that I think if I could ask him any question, uh, it would have to be something quite focused in like that. Okay, let's go to Elsbeta M. Saying, good evening, Robert. I've got a couple of extra questions for the end. Um, I've recently been catching up on past live streams that brought up who the prince that was promised is. And the question that keeps coming to my mind is, why does there have to be only one? It's a good question. What if the reason so many different characters seem to fit the prophecy is that multiple characters are the fulfillment of that prophecy? David Peterson, who's the person who came up with the language for Valyrian, High Valyrian, he said that the High Valyrian doesn't have indefinite articles like an or the, which means there's no differentiation between the prince that was promised and a prince that was promised. And while George R. R. Martin may not have directed that, he has apparently blessed it as canon. So Rhaegar, Aegon, Jon, and Daenerys could all be a prince that was promised. Maybe young Griff or Stannis as well. The question then becomes not who the actual prince that was promised is, but who will manage to survive to fulfill their destiny. So, as a corollary to this, Melisandre seems to be trying to force Stannis to fit the prophecy. Do you think she's just trying to fake it until you make it? Or do you think she sees the prophecy not as signs by which to recognize Azor Ahai reborn, but factors that can be manipulated to bring them into being? Okay. A few different questions. Should we start off with the Melisandre one? We actually have from her an explanation of why Stannis. Now, this is what she says. I have seen him leading the fight against the dark. I have seen it in the flames. The flames do not lie, else you would not be here. It is written in prophecy as well. When the red star bleeds and the darkness gathers, Azor Ahai shall be born again amidst smoke and salt to wake dragons out of stone. The bleeding star has come and gone, and Dragonstone is the place of smoke and salt. Stannis Baratheon is Azor Ahai reborn. So that's her logic. Two main things. Firstly, she's seen him in her flames doing Azor Ahai stuff. And then secondly, because she thinks that he fits the prophecy. Now, the fitting the prophecy thing, her going to Dragonstone actually probably kind of makes sense, because a lot of people seem to think that Dragonstone might be there. A lot of, if you want Dany being born amidst smoke and salt, then it's Dragonstone she was born at. So Melisandre thinking Dragonstone, I'll find Azor Ahai on Dragonstone, is pretty standard. There's nothing particularly crazy about that. When she arrives, though, she says that she sees him in the flames, leading the fight. Now, perhaps that's a true vision. Perhaps she does see him leading the fight. But that doesn't mean that he's... I mean, she interprets it as that. Perhaps she means that she can see him on the wall fighting against lots of baddies coming up and attacking, and him very clearly being in charge of that, of the defenses. Maybe he's at one bit of the wall and other people are at another bit of the wall. That doesn't mean that he's leading the fight, just that he's leading the fight there. And she does misinterpret what she sees in the flames quite a lot. So she goes to Dragonstone. She finds out, well, here's a guy who should be the king, according to most sort of understandings. If Joffrey is not really Robert Baratheon's son, then Stannis is the heir. So he is a prince, and he's connected with Dragonstone, and she has seen him in the flames doing stuff which looks very Azor Ahai reborn. And she's seen the red comet, thinking it's now, and there's no one else around who could possibly do this, so it's him. And then she gets completely behind him. So that's the logic. I think maybe she will come around to a different view later, but it seems very clear to me that she is very much of that view, because she's seen it in the flames, she's read the prophecy, and even when she asks for a sight of Azor Ahai in her flames, it appears that her flames show her Jon Snow. Even then, she doesn't believe it, because she's so caught up. This isn't just a fake it till you make it. I think she does genuinely believe that Stannis is Azor Ahai reborn. It might change later, but at the moment, that's the situation. Okay. Might there be more than one? Is the other sort of question here. Yes. So David Peterson, who's excellent, he came up with Dothraki as well as High Valyrian. He said, yeah, there's no there's no particular reason that there are no indefinite articles in High Valyrian, so there's no particular reason to think that it has to be the prince that was promised. Now, what do we make of that? I mean, I think that a lot of this does depend on, well, the first two things. First of all, that isn't from George R. R. Martin. He didn't say he let David Peterson do what he wanted with it. He literally invented 7 words of High Valyrian. George R. R. Martin. That's it. That's all he did. He's been very open. He's not a philologist. He's not Tolkien. He doesn't create languages. He creates a feel for a language. And so the High Valyrian words that you know and I know, they feel as if they kind of fit together, as do the Dothraki words. But he's not creating an actual language. David Peterson did that. So the idea that there could be a mix-up between and the is not coming from George R. R. Martin. Yes, he sort of has allowed this in show world, but this isn't a thing. It could be princess rather than prince is something that he has definitely played with, but not necessarily the rather than the. So that's the first point. The second is that High Valyrian isn't the only language that the prince that was promised is delivered in. It also comes from the Woods Witch, who becomes the Ghost of High Heart, who comes with Jenny of Old Stones. Now, she, as far as we can tell, did not deliver that prophecy in High Valyrian, which seems to imply that it isn't, given that they didn't interpret it as a prince that was promised, but the prince that was promised. This isn't where the error came in with the translation. All of that said, this idea that there will be more than one person who is doing the job of the prince that was promised, Azor Ahai Reborn, I think feels quite right. I think there will be a whole load of people who take on the role in different ways. I think Jon and Dany, in their own ways, will each take on part of this kind of role of being Azor Ahai Reborn, prince that was promised. Other characters, you can very much argue for. I mean, I've heard people arguing that Davos could be, or Rhaegar from while he was still alive could have been. What about young Griff? Could he? So Stannis can even. He can stand atop of the wall, lead the fight. He can do it a whole lot of this. So there are lots of people who couldn't take up a bit of this role. My rather pithy summary, which I've had for quite a while, is that I suspect that even after all the story is finished and we're talking about it afterwards, we will look back and still be debating who was the prince that was promised. George R. R. Martin is not going to go through at the end and say, put a tick here for this prophecy. An explanation on this prophecy was actually talking about that person over there. That's not what he's like. That's not how this works. He wants there to be layers of uncertainty. First, Ballerina saying a second theme in her story, Arya's story, is wanting control over life and death. She wants to bring back Ned, helps bring back Cat, has a kill list. What do you think will make... Oh, pardon me. What do you think will make her lose this desire? Lady Stoneheart, or is it her arc to master life and death? Now, I don't think she's going to master life and death in as much as she's not going to end up in this all-powerful state. What I think we're going to end up with is this idea of the gift of mercy. I think it's underplayed, but is going to be quite a crucial part in the thematic growth of Arya. Is this idea of death isn't just about revenge. She's very focused in on people deserve to die or don't deserve to die. And if she has this slightly more grown up, nuanced approach that some people want the gift of mercy. Some people who die probably don't deserve to die. So if she can reach that more nuanced approach rather than just, if somebody has done a bad thing, I will kill them. That, I think, is the kind of the character growth that we're looking for, because that's where she's at the moment. Is that you get, okay, you can say Wrath the Sweetling was on her list. Fine, she's going to kill him. Darion was not on her list. She didn't know him before she ran into him, and it is also not the role of a daughter of the Starks to be doling out executions of Night's Watchmen who've been abandoning their post. Ned definitely executed Night's Watchmen, but that was his role as the Lord, not Arya, who just took it upon herself to do that. So I think that she needs to come to this better understanding of life and death. That means that she comes to accept the fact that she doesn't have the control over it. Through Backer saying, greetings, Robert and Dan. I have a question that isn't Arya related, but is one that I've been meaning to ask for some time. I have often wondered about the Faith of the Seven's views on the afterlife. Details seem to be curiously absent, and in my last read through, I only remember seeing a mention about feasting in the halls of my fathers or some such. Maybe I missed something, or more details are hidden in the supplemental text. is there anything that I can share? Absolutely. So yeah, there is a concept of the afterlife within the Faith of the Seven. I think the feasting, it was feasting in the halls of the Father, capital F, who is one of the seven. So overall, the picture is there's seven hells and seven heavens. Indeed, you can hear occasionally it's a swear word or phrase. Seven hells. Robert Baratheon's the kind of thing Robert Baratheon would say. There are seven hells and seven heavens, and where you go when you die is a reflection of what you did. Were you a good person, and also did you repent of any sins? Basically, so if you were good, then you go to this uh, really beautiful kind of place where you get laughter and singing. Light and honey is a phrase which is used for the seven heavens, and the heavens get better. So, you know, maybe you did quite a good life, you're all right, but you know, you did a few bad things, but then you did ask for forgiveness. That you get the bottom tier of heaven. Then, you know, the next tier is for people who are a bit better. The seventh tier of heaven, that's just for the saints. That's the really amazing people. So you get your seven heavens, and then you get your seven hells. And the seven hells are broadly just the flip side of the seven heavens. So there's different levels, and they just get gradually worse and worse and worse. This is kind of reminiscent of Dante's Inferno. That's the kind of feel that it is fiery, it is dark. There's a lord of the seven hells who kind of tortures people and things like that. But again, if you were just a bit bad, you might just be in the top level. But then the worse you are, further down into the hells you go. And one of the sayings that they have is everything can be forgiven, but crime must be punished. So you're balancing these things. It's not just a matter of you can get to the end of your life, say sorry for everything, and then you're going to go up to heaven and it's all going to be okay. That's not the kind of vibe we're working with here. There is a quid pro quo, but you have to lead your good life. So yes, there is a very clear understanding of the afterlife as far as the Faith of the Seven is concerned. Should mention the Silent Sisters. The Silent Sisters are septors who they dedicate their lives to preparing the people's bodies for death, for not for death, for burial. Basically, they will take somebody's body home. So when we talk about where are Ned Stark's bones, this isn't just like one guy heading up the King's Road, you know, backpack over his shoulder with a whole load of bones in it. The Silent Sisters were accompanying it. So this is actually a group of holy people who have been spending their time making sure that Ned Stark can be his bones can be taken back up to his ancestors. So if we're looking for where Ned Stark's bones are, we're also looking to see where those scepters might be. And yeah, I think that's broadly it. So that's the view of the Faith of the Seven about sort of after death. Rassler. It's implied that Jeor Mormont made Jon a steward because he wanted to groom Jon for command. But looking at the history of Lord Commanders, it seems it's much more common for Lord Commander to come from Rangers or be First Ranger. Do you think it's possible the real reason Jon was made a steward is because Ned requested it personally, so that Jon would be safe at the wall, but not in danger of dying out on the ranging, therefore keeping his promise to Lyanna? It seems likely the Lord Commander would fulfill any request that a Warden of the North would ask if it was reasonable. Okay. Yes, I think that such was the respect and relationship between particularly General Mormont and Ned Stark, that Lord Mormont would have accepted any reasonable request from Ned. But I don't think that was what was going on there. Honestly, as you've said, the standard answer as for why J.R. Mormont wanted Jon to be in the stewards was that he wasn't just wanting him to be a steward. He wanted him to be his personal steward. He wanted Jon, to be in the room when decisions were being made, when they were forward planning about what was going on. He wanted Jon to be seeing leadership in action. He was basically setting himself up as a mentor on this kind of fast track scheme. Now, we don't know all of the details of all the previous Lord Commanders. Obviously, there's been a lot of them. Yes, First Rangers can do quite well, as can the people who are in charge of other castles along the wall. The fact is, though, that a Lord Commander cannot decide, or they cannot pick their successor. Every time it's done by something close to a democratic vote. Now, at the moment that they were in, there were only 3 castles left in use. Castle Black, and then the castles at either end, Shadow Tower, Eastwatch. So there was a garrison at both of those. But if you were out there on one of those places, you wouldn't, and we see this when we get all the lobbying, is that they might bring their own men and have their votes from their own men, but if they've not been in Castle Black, then they're missing out on the biggest number of people. Jon would be in Castle Black, all the new recruits coming in, he could help out, he could befriend them, everybody could see him there. He was a lot more visible. He was actually being set up to be a potential future Lord Commander. So that all makes absolute sense, because J.R. Mormont saw something in Jon. That there weren't very many high-quality recruits coming to the Night's Watch, and so Jon will have been quite rare. He's somebody who he could read, he could fight, he'd been trained how to fight properly, and he did have this kind of leadership quality to him that attracted a band of very loyal people around him. So all of that Gerald Mormont will have spotted and will have thought, well, we can kind of work with this. It's that, or well, we don't want these other people who can't read. We need somebody who can read. We need somebody who can understand strategy and tactics and what's going on in the wider Seven Kingdoms. Joe Mormont made a very sensible decision in bringing Jon in to be his first steward. And I think we can be looking for other reasons, but that has to be the main one. I would also say, with this idea that maybe Ned asked for Jon not to be made a ranger, it doesn't actually feel like Ned. I don't think that he would have interfered with the Night's Watch. He respected the role of the Night's Watch, and once somebody was in the Night's Watch, they were in the Night's Watch, and that meant that Ned didn't have authority over them. But him just sort of like saying, well, let's keep this person back from actually getting involved and going north of the wall, just give him as cushy a place as you possibly can. It doesn't feel like Ned. He placed Jon front and center. He was hiding him in plain sight, and so it's not that he wanted to keep it risk free. He'd done his bit. He'd sort of passed it over to Benjen. I think that's the way this actually worked. It's not that he wrote to Joe Marmont, sort of saying, handing over, and here's Jon Snow. He's deliberately, he said, when he made the decision, he says, I'm going to have to talk to Benjen. So he's talked to Benjen about this. Perhaps Benjen might have had a word with Joe Marmont and said, you could do us. But yeah, I don't think there's a need for Ned to do this. Joe Marmont makes an entirely rational decision based on what he's seen. Off topic, says Zero, but where do you think that Dany will invade Westeros? Most fan theories focus on Dragonstone, but Tyrion would point to the Vale. The original invasion of Westeros by the Andals. What do you think? So, where will she invade? I think all of the thematic money has to go onto Dragonstone. She is echoing Aegon the Conqueror, Three Dragons. She's going to be landing there, and that's where she was born, and that kind of feels like it's come around full circle. So her landing on and claiming Dragonstone feels right. She could go into the Vale and try and take the Vale. It's hard to see, though, why that would be a particular wise first place to go, because the Vale had been staying out of stuff basically this time. There was no reason to think that they would suddenly jump out and come on somebody's side. Added to which, winter was arriving, and actually somebody made, I can't remember who it was over on Patreon, made this point, really good point. When winter comes, the Vale's cut off. Nobody can come in, and right, the pass through the mountains is snowed in. You can't get through, which means that there's actually no way out of the Vale. Once you're in there, during winter there's no way out. And the only other thing is you catch a boat out of Gulltown or somewhere like that. So it feels like the kind of place that you can leave till later on. There are other more pressing places for you to be attacking. The other place that I would say is possible is the Stormlands. This was the idea when we get young Griff, Aegon the Sixth invasion, then we hear that they all landed there. Why there? Well, because the Baratheon army suffered a big defeat, and then what was left of it headed north with Stannis. So there's not really much to defend it, which is similarly the case right now, it has to be said, with Dragonstone. And it's entirely possible that the fleet, if it comes through the Stepstones, we keep on hearing that there are people there are pirates there are problems. It's entirely possible that they might have some trouble coming through the Stepstones, and also when they're nearing the Stormlands, it's kind of stormy, and that's what scuppered young Griff's attack plan, because the storm came, the fleet got separated, and everybody they all had an idea of where they were supposed to land, but instead it was just a land wherever you can, and we'll try and meet up. So Dragonstone is my most likely thought. Ranabim Mitra talking, this is actually a Lord of the Rings question. In your recent video about Numenor, I wanted to thank you for sharing with us that Tolkien and his son had a dream of the sinking of Numenor Atlantis. I was shocked when I read your script. What's even more shocking to me is that he says, I bequeathed it to Faramir. Really? Did Faramir have prophetic dreams about the sinking of Numenor? This could be a basic mistake from me, but I thought that his only dream was about seek the sword that was broken. Yeah, so Faramir did. It's a fun fact that Tolkien, when asked which Lord of the Rings character most resembles you, he actually says Faramir. Now, we don't get to read about this all that much, but yes, he seems to have had recurring dreams, Faramir, of Numenor being just washed away. And he says this, you can find it in Lord of the Rings, when he and Éowyn are recovering from their wounds in the halls of healing. He kind of mentions in passing about this dream that he's had several times. He doesn't seem to think of it as a prophetic dream. It's just something that he's got. Why does that happen? Because this connects him to the Numenorians. He has within him a lot of the nobility of the Numenorians at their greatest. And so this helps us see that is what he is like. And it shows why he should, with Éowyn, be basically given the east side of their Anduin to rule. For those wondering what the Tolkien idea that he had these dreams. So he says this. It's quite a surprise if you've not heard it. But the old legend of Atlantis, Tolkien kind of adapted that to be like Numenor, the height of human civilization, but all washed away in an act of God. And Tolkien himself had that as a recurring dream. He said a couple of times is that he has this dream of the ineluctable wave, I think he calls it, which just washes everything away. And he says that one of his sons, I think it's Michael, I think in the video I said Christopher, I think is actually Michael, also got this dream. What Tolkien says is that after he finished writing about it, Numenor, his Atlantis, after he'd finished doing that, he stopped getting the dreams. So yeah, that's what was there. The idea of Numenor or Atlantis is actually central to Tolkien's writing. For a lot of us, this is just like some island kingdom from a while ago. But for Tolkien, this was one of the main heartbeats of his story. So, friend, saying, Happy Thursday, Robert. Do you think there will be a time that the Faceless Men essentially turn Arya loose to go and play a role in defeating the others? It won't be exactly like the show, but it does make sense for her arc. And also why they continue with her training despite her clearly doing a poor job shedding her own identity. And at what point do you think they might decide that's the path they want her on? Or have they already? Might people in Bravos already know that the others are back? Best wishes, warmest regards to you two. So, yeah, some interesting questions. I've covered a lot about the when and how they might let her go. But let's get to this point about do they know? And if so, how long have they known about the others, about the White Walkers? I think the short answer is that they are learning about it now. They're understanding this now. The Bravosi do travel quite far, but they, like everyone else, will have viewed the others as being just some kind of legend left over that we can largely ignore. The facts, though, are starting to drip in for some people who are willing to listen. They are there. First of all, Tycho Nestoris, I mentioned him a while ago. He is the Iron Bank's ambassador, basically. He headed up to the wall. He spoke to Jon Snow. Then he headed off, found Stannis, and then Stannis cut a deal with him to borrow some money, and he heads back up with a view to going back to Bravos, which means that at some point relatively early in the Winds of Winter, he will return back, do his full debrief, and say, and the Night's Watch are convinced the others are coming back. And they've got a whole load of stories about this. So from a very credible source, the Iron Bank will be made aware if they hadn't already been made aware. There's also the wildlings from Hardhome. Arya notes this when she's there wandering the streets of Bravos, and she's given. Do you remember she's given this task to learn 3 new things every day? And one day, the three things that she learns are about a boat, a ship that had been caught by the Bravo Sea, coming away from Hardhome, and they'd taken some of the Hardhome citizens and enslaved them. And Bravos hates slavery. So they're happy to be rescuing those people, but those people will be coming to them. The wildlings will be coming to them with this long history that's basically saying, yeah, we used to be very happy living up north of the wall, but then the others started coming back, and Mance Rayder gathered everybody together, and we decided to go with him because we were scared because the others were coming back, and we got to the wall and we tried to get through, but that didn't work, and we all scattered, and then Mother Mole told us to come here. So that's the story, but the key bit will be to corroborate what Tychonosaurus says. The sensible people in the north are convinced that the others have returned. And then we also finally will get Justin Massey, who is effectively the ambassador for Stannis, who has been sent to Bravos in order to find some sellsword companies. But while he's there, if the Iron Bank sort of call him in for a quick chat, he will be able to confirm that, yes, Stannis is of the belief that the wall will soon come under attack from the others. So I think, so to boil that down to sort of the answer, I think that they're starting to be aware of it just now. Whereas the dragons, they probably were aware of a few months earlier. This, they're only aware just now. One more question from my patrons, then I'll pick up as much as I can in the chat. Lorelei Dragon saying, good evening, Robert. I hope you're well. I am, thank you. I'd like to hear some speculation about what will happen when or if Arya reunites with Nymeria. Will her continued wolf dreams mean that they still share a bond? And when or if she reunites with Sansa, do you think there will be any borderline hostility as on the show? That always seemed odd to me. Okay, so what about when she reunites with Nymeria? On the TV show, she meets somewhere in the Riverlands. She meets Nymeria again, and they kind of have a moment. And it's like, am I going to go with her? And it's like, nope, that isn't me. I've moved on. I'm different. Was the kind of implication. There were concerns at the time because the showrunners and others kept saying it, that this may well have been driven by a desire not to have to do CGI on the direwolves. We were told repeatedly at the time, you may or may not remember this, that dragons were one thing, but the direwolves are actually a lot harder. And that is why in the last few seasons, we see Ghost so little. He should be around Jon almost all the time, but we hardly see him at all, because it was expensive and it was complicated to be making direwolves appear on screen, apparently. So I don't think we should take what happened on the TV show as an answer to what would happen. I think she won't go with them. I think the bond will still be there. And it's entirely possible that she, through Nymeria, could lead them to do a thing. I still love this idea. There's a whole chain of logic. I'll make a video at some point. It's a whole chain of logic leading up to it. But this idea of a Red Wedding 2.0 in Riverrun, with Frey getting married, and actually Lady Stoneheart, Brotherhood Without Banners, Arya, the super pack of wolves, all combine to take out everybody in that room at the wedding. And if that's the case, then it may well be that Arya is working with, because you can't just tell a whole bunch of wolves, okay, we're going to walk over this way for a few days, and then that castle, that's the one that you have to be attacking. And wait, not yet, wait now. So that wouldn't work unless she still had some sort of a bond. So I don't think she's going to go and run off with them or anything like that. But I think that she is going to fully realise her skin-changing powers. As for Sansa, will there be any tension? I mean, there might be some tension. I've already mentioned this when we were talking about Sansa. There might be some tension in terms of Sansa because Sansa wrote that letter, she married that Targaryen, and so on. So there will be some uncertainty. But what I think they were trying to do on the show, I feel like I've said this a lot on this live stream. What I think they were trying to do on the show was to show a little bit of tension between the Starks that is reflective of what will almost certainly happen in the books, which is a lot of people, when the Boltons fall, the Starks are back. A lot of people will have their champion. We've already got Wyman Manderley, who's seemingly picked Rickon. He's well behind Rickon. We've got Littlefinger, who's going to be bringing Sansa up. Whoever is coming with Jon, the wildlings, maybe, possibly even Stannis, will be happy for Jon to be taking up the reins of power there in Winterfell. And so all the different Starks will have their champions, and it's going to be the champions where the stress is and the disagreements, not the actual Starks themselves. So I think it's less likely that the Starks will be at each other's throats than their wider entourages. And then the last thing you asked just was whether I plan to attend the Brandywine Festival in the UK this year. Yeah, by sheer coincidence, I actually stumbled across this earlier today. Somebody else mentioned this. So the Brandywine Festival is, as I understand it, as I say, I've only just really been discovering it. This is a festival which has been running in America, I think in Kentucky. I might be wrong on that one. For a while, people seem to enjoy it. And they're opening one up in Britain, in Staffordshire, I think I saw, and in September, maybe. So will I be going there? Well, I mean, I haven't investigated it yet, so no promises on that. I will be out and about a few times though this year. If you did happen to be in the same place as me and see me wandering around in any of these places, just do come up and say hi. It'd be fantastic to see you. This Saturday, I'm randomly at Salute, which is Europe's largest wargaming convention in the Excel Centre in London. I'll be there, just sort of wandering around. I've been promised at least one Battle of the Five Armies, which I'm going to try and do a few little videos or pictures from and sort of talk through that, using that as a medium, as it were. We'll make some content. So that's one thing I'm doing. Then I'm also going, again, quite randomly to Tolkien Tug, which is in Germany, and it is Europe's largest Tolkien convention. I know a few members of the German Tolkien Society, and they're excellent people, and apparently it's an excellent event. So I'm going to combine that with going to try and hunt for some German castles. They do good castles in Germany. So yeah, that's another place I'll be going to, and obviously don't know exactly when, but when I get my tickets, I will be going to Stratford upon Avon for the stage play. So I will be out. Well, we'll be out and about, and I will look into the Brandywine Festival. But yeah, main point is if you see me in any of those places, do stop by and say hello. Okay, let's have a quick flick through the chat. The Kentucky Derby is a very famous horse race here every year, or Derby, as you say over there. Ranabe Mitra saying a few of those lovely German Tolkien folks joined Robert in his recent charity stream. Yes, absolutely. So Helen and Lucas were there. Also Marcel, who has done, he's actually sort of helped write a couple of the Tolkien videos as well. Marcel, for those who don't know, is he was the founder of the German Tolkien Society, and he's a professional translator. So he's yeah, he helped had an idea to do a in Deep Geek in German, in Deep Geek Deutsch, and he translated a couple of scripts. Very kindly translated a couple of scripts across to me for me. But anyway, so he's a nice guy. But the Maps guy says, I'm going to be at Salute. Well, come and say hi if you see me. I'm not in any particular places. I shall be wandering around. And uh, uh, Rana Bimitra saying, do you see how little percentage stake Warner Brother Theatre Productions has on the play? Implies that George R. R. Martin has a lot of control in the script. I feel it's safe to call this medium book canon adjacent. Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know that Warner Brothers Theatre Productions existed, let alone had any stake in this. But yeah, so this is not written by George R. R. Martin, but he has been actively involved in it, in its development. I think we can safely say that there is not going to be any significant thing in this stage play which is against canon. This is only, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if they've even announced it yet, but let's say it's 2 hours. That's just one long script. He will have read, I am sure he will have read every word, and he will have had opinions on things, and I see no reason why they would change things, or they wouldn't change things to match what he said. So yeah, this is a George R. R. Martin thing. This isn't an HBO thing. So this, I mean, something he has said a while ago. It was a History of Westeros interview, which go and look at it. It was a few years ago now, but it very clearly they asked some good questions of him about his approach to effectively his approach to canon, which may have changed now. Who knows? But his approach then was very much there's 2 canons. There's book canon and there's show canon. And when it comes to new TV shows, what he thought his role was, as I say, this may have changed. What he thought his role was firstly to try and make sure that show canon was as close to book canon as possible, and secondly, that show canon was consistent with itself. So all of the TV shows match up consistently. Now, the stage play is going to be in book canon. It's not canon, as it's not George R. R. Martin writing it himself. And I don't really like the discussions of what is canon, what isn't canon. But I think, as I say, I think the rule of thumb is that if there's some big reveal, then I think that we should take that very, very seriously. If, for example, as we get the reveal that Lyanna was the Knight of the Laughing Tree, I think that means that we can almost put a lock on that. And until we get it in a book somewhere, I think it would be highly odd for George R. R. Martin to be this closely aligned with something. And he's been there, he's had his photo taken with the people. He's allowing his photo to be like one of the main bits of the promotion. So he's allowing this to be him there. It's not just TV show stuff. It would be very odd if he allowed a major bit of lore in there that contradicted what's in book canon. Look, setting up a medieval bakery. Andrew Case saying it could be returning to Westeros. Arya more directly links up to the direwolf psychic network, which may enhance her abilities and understanding. Yeah, we don't really understand how distance impacts skin changing. instinctively we think the further someone's away from their the animal that they're skin changing into, then the weaker the bond is. It doesn't seem to be quite like it does seem that you have to actually astrally travel to it, as it were, and so if it's closer, then that takes less time. But yeah, it's not 100% clear whether that would her being on the same continent would boost her powers. One of those things George Martin hasn't been 100% clear on. Okay. Okay, and let's have a quick flick through last few questions. And the wall, yes, looks like across the wall, agree weirwood. Yes, so one thing that we do know is that the wall does appear to, we know it's a magical barrier more than a physical barrier. The wall does appear to cause a problem when it comes to skin changing. Jon just can't, when he's on one side and Ghost is on the other, then there's no connection with them. Okay. Some people call me Maura saying I want puppet cannon. Yes. I think we will get that. Brennan Mitra is saying, do you remember all those blog posts where George R. Martin was aiming for a West End theatre? He eventually struck gold with the Royal Shakespeare Company. A Littlefinger level coup, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, in terms of production values, this is going to be absolutely top draw. I have no doubt whatsoever. But just to clarify on that, we're looking at this is just for an initial run. This is going to be, I don't know what it will be in the end, 6-7 weeks, something like that. So we're not talking like a long residency. The Royal Shakespeare Theatre, they're there to be doing Shakespeare. I mean, they do other things as well, but they love putting on Shakespeare plays, and they're very good at it. This is, from their perspective, I think this is a way that they think they can raise profile. They can put on a really good show, and also attract a few extra people to be members of the Royal Shakespeare Company. I highly recommend that you do so. It's an excellent thing to be a member of. But the idea, I think, is still, from what George R. Martin has said, for it to then come and find a permanent-ish home somewhere in the West End in London. As I say, it will have to be a big theatre. It's entirely possible that they do have a big theatre in mind, but there's something there already. So it may well have been that all the cards kind of fell into the right place, that there was a slot at the Royal Shakespeare Theatre for a short-term period while they're waiting to be putting it up somewhere in the West End. Okay. German IDG, and I missed it because Carl Carson It hasn't happened. I've made a couple of videos. I've not had the time to actually do the channel and set it running, but it's on the long list. Okay, I think with that, let's start to wrap this up. I think I will do, as I say, on these live streams, I will try to cover the other Stark kids. So we can do, who should we do next? Let's do Rob next, and then we'll go through Bran and Rickon, and hey, we could do Jon, I suppose, as well. We'll do the Lord of the Rings things again about once a month, and we're actually not that far away from the House of the Dragon season 3 coming up. That's going to be in June. We haven't got an exact date yet, but we know that's going to be in June. So we might mix things up a little bit there. But between now and then, yeah, look out for a little bit more short form content and stuff. If I'm out and about, I will try and take a few shots of where I am and what's going on, hopefully in some interesting and entertaining ways, if I can get the technology to work. But if you are watching this, let's say a few thanks first. Patrons, thank you again. Moderators, thank you again. Please leave some love for the moderators there in the chat. If you are watching this back on YouTube a bit later on, appearing here-ish is going to be a link to other live streams that I've done. Appearing here-ish is going to be a link to my Patreon page, which is the best way to support this channel if you wish to do so. I will be back same time next week. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you again soon.